That's not me. It's not me. Get your finger away. Get your finger away. No, it's not me.
Henderson's farm is quite spectacular, isn't it?
Yeah.
And you could say in terms of landscape values, you look at it and the imagery is just fantastic. It would be well worth if anyone gets the opportunity to go out and have a look. It's quite something to see.
Thank you.
Alistair, would you like to comment on?
I would just like to recognise that Philip, he put this whole thing together after our 2 field days and did a damn good job with it. The important bits, as I see it, the photographs are good. You can look at those and work through. But the reflections of myself, John and Phil are really the important bits of getting this whole thing tied together and getting it going in a reasonably kind of like sort of an order. And I think if you follow those reflections through, it really fulfills what we were talking about this morning of setting up our wetlands task force and the type of people that could be in there. So we've sort of gone through them. So is there any questions on that? Please forward them to Phil.
Could Phil do the narrative?
Flavour Malachi.
Yeah.
I would reflect that, given that a picture paints 1,000 words, it's a 50,000 word report equivalent. It was interesting talking to Kane Duncan about their proposed wetland that they were thinking about doing at Waituna. He suggested it's probably not going to, more recently I spoke to him, he said it's probably not going to go ahead. But he observed that the really important part of that is that there's still really valuable lessons yet to be captured and recorded and shared from the effort. Even if it doesn't go ahead, they have learned much from that particular project. And we'll be looking to apply the resources that are available for that somewhere else in the landscape for equally positive effect. But I think the overarching aim of that program of visits was to just build appreciation and recognition for the range of practical considerations that are available in respect of the wetlands development opportunities in Southland. And acknowledging, though, that we looked at a specific subset of wetland types, and there's broader wetland options out there in the landscape that we can pursue moving forward.
Thanks, Phil. And the picture might tell 1,000 words, but could you make them smaller? I did my head in trying to stay on Objective Connect. I had to get the hard copy at the end. Lovely pictures. And on the Waituna one, while the Trust has agreed to pause that one, we were hopeful we will be able to purchase of land that would actually have a much more significant effect on the water quality in the Waituna Lagoon. The other was, it got very expensive, and while it was going to prove a concept for the money involved, we didn't feel it was going to give us the results we wanted to. So the wetland is not dead, but I think it's been a prudent decision to try and spend the money in an area with some really good results. I've got Eric in Lyndall.
Yeah, just great report. Thanks, team, for actually doing that and giving us such a good report. I just wonder if we can't get a bit more proactive coming out of the discussion we had earlier in caucus as well. I've just gone through a QCOMS audit for the appropriate behaviour on my farm, and there was no interest at all in my biofilters or whatever I was doing, but they were greatly disturbed that I didn't have the appropriate needle disposal from injecting animals. And I just think it's time for a discussion with both QCOMS and Assure that there needs to be some marks for actually doing appropriate environmental behaviour. And I just think we need to have that discussion.
Perhaps just also to share an insight from a visit to a farm in the Waikato 2 weeks ago, where the sheep and beef farmer explained that the local district plan provides for development credits for investment in planting and wetland development. So he said that's been by investing in wetlands and planting and native regeneration. It's enabled him to also do other things on his property, including some lifestyle subdivisions, which has meant he can remain viable investing in biodiversity and water quality work, but receiving some recognition for that from that at a local government level. So that was an interesting model. I thought that might be worth exploring.
And happen for me, where I've got both reserves, natives and biofilters and dams and various things that seem to be focused on, I don't want to say trivia, but minor issues.
Phil, that would be a good report.
And look, just on that, the initiative that we've put through the regional sector to government would allow for some of those entities that come onto farm now. We could probably cover it. And that certainly would be about wetlands, riparian planting, and catchment based things. We probably only need a small number of extra questions, whether it's Fonterra, whether it is the quality of shore type things. And there's quite a consensus. You don't want 2 or 3 people going to the same driveway asking similar questions, so let's try and work together. And the biodiversity discussion is quite active. Probably move away from the SNA's government direction, but as soon as you put a value on something, we're going to get a lot of people much more interested. And it doesn't have to be a big value, but once it's a value, people will protect it. Lyndall.
Thanks, Chairman. A couple of questions, but firstly, just to say, recognise that councillors recognise that everybody takes in information differently and included lots of pictures. Sometimes that's important. 2 questions. Firstly, you comment about the learnings from the Fonterra change of heart. How are we going to see those? Is there a report that comes so that we can actually
Are you talking
learn?
about wetlands?
Yes.
So it's not so much of fond of it. So we've got Living Water, which is funding from both DOC and Fonterra, and the project we've been working on. It's actually a piece of our lease land in the Waitona catchment because we hadn't been able to source a better one. But since that work was done, there's the Martle Road. There's been another purchase between adjacent land, if it came up, would have and this.
So, Chairman, my
land.
question really about where we would see the reasons for the decision, their decision to change tack, and where we would see that report. Is there?
Well, we can certainly report that back, possibly.
I mean, so that comes back through regional services.
Right.
So the Waituna reports on the Waituna Trust and our work in the Waituna Trust all come back through the regional services committee.
Right.
So that's where you'll see.
The other question is the Environmental Enhancement Fund. Do any of the wetland, those people that you visited, did they utilise that fund, or does it cover that?
No, they didn't, but it was talked about on the day with John and John.
Okay. But they didn't use it, or it didn't apply to them?
Well, we didn't, the wetland that we went to out, who was that, out here at Thornbury somewhere, Sparbush.
Yeah.
We didn't see the farmer to discuss that, so yeah, it wasn't. But it was talked about.
Certainly an opportunity for people to use. Yeah, thanks, Chairman.
Robert. Peter.
Thanks very much, Mr. Chairman. I really enjoyed the report. I love the photographs of councillors standing up, pointing far into the distance with the grass waving at their feet. The imagery was fantastic. What was the line about mallow puffs? Who didn't bring the mallow puffs? Yeah, brilliant with a bit of humour.
I'll bring them to the next one.
To the next one.
Yeah.
But I've just got a question for Phil and Al. Maybe you must have had a lot of discussion of what's next. Could you just give us a wee bit of a rundown of where you think you've collected a lot of information and stored that? Where do you see things going next? Just if you don't mind.
You go first because you're going to
I
be more
guess,
accurate.
I mean, from at a personal level, having gone through the journey with the regional forum and then into the council role, it was around building awareness of the opportunity inherent in wetlands, looking at it from a practical point of view, keeping in mind that the modelling to date suggests that a big part of our journey to Hawara depends and is essential upon accelerating wetland development across all of our reporting catchments. Some reporting catchments more so than others. And understanding that, that all of these interventions will make a difference on the ground, but the gap between where we are today and what we need to achieve with Hawara is going to require significant investment. And we just need to both increase the level of innovation associated with that, significantly decrease the costs to make it more palatable, more appealing to farmers to go down that or land managers, landowners to go down that pathway. There are some great models to look at already in the landscapes, but also we want to be a bit more diverse in our thinking, because that's one model of wetland. There are equally others, probably, and especially in some of the lowland areas, perhaps more effective of what we saw with Waituna, that can be explored.
And I think my motivation on it was when we had a change in government, you could see that things weren't going to go well as far as all the farming, farm plans and all sorts of things. So here was an opportunity to get stuck into a non-regulatory thing to get going and make traction and improve our water quality, because that's where we're going in the end. We actually started that way back at when we had a meeting in Gore, got our first round of looking at things in just before Christmas, and then the second one just in January. So in essence, my thing is that we're just taking far too long to get these things done, and then very disappointed today to be told that we've got to wait till the end of May before we actually start again to push these things. But when you talk to a Thriving Southland, there are people there are already doing it. So, we've got to just keep pushing, keep things going, and get it done. I would like to put another question to you, Eric. Where are we going with QComms and AgriQuality to get this into their reports? Because you said it'll just die if that's
Yeah,
all.
well, I raised it as an issue here. I'm just, we need to be proactive as a council, I think.
Yeah, but that's not going to get it done, is it?
Oh, because
We get a report back by the 1st of
Yeah,
July.
across the room here. On that issue, if the initiative we've put to government is taken up, we will have the opportunity to have those conversations with the various industry groups, and I think we can advance those things. I think there's an appetite for it, and it's just a matter of knowing what the regional council needs and a farm plan that's cost effective and owned by the farmers, and that's what everybody is sitting. Paul, you were waiting.
Thank you, Chair. I didn't actually have a question. I didn't think I'd indicated a question, but good report. Thank you very much.
I did that very good report.
No.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Our Councillor Ludlow mentioned the Environmental Enhancement Fund, and whether any of that has been used by people who build in wetlands. I'm just wondering, based on the talk we had earlier about wetlands and the different types of wetlands and the preference, well, my preference anyway, for building wetlands which are more natural rather than the duck pond or the water the water storage ponds. I'm just wondering if that feeling has filtered down to the people who are administering the environment fund, because what I'm asking is, are we giving money for duck pond creation where it would be preferable to be making everybody aware that it would be better to funnel it towards wetlands of another kind? Does that make sense to anybody?
Can I just chip in, Jim? I think most of that fund is used to protect existing blocks of native bush, which is why I'm asking about whether it's been used for any of the weekend development.
Yes.
So I'd be interested in staff being able to chip in here if they can, because I don't know whether it's been used for any kind of pond / wetland development thing.
Fiona looks to be nodding. Would you like to make a comment?
It has out near Riverton.
So obviously in lieu of Polly and Ellie who are unable to attend today, I think getting some full oversight on the parameters for the enhancement fund would be great. My understanding is that the enhancement fund has been very focused on restoring or protecting existing biodiversity. So it's really the focus has been on the places where we do still have those important areas of natural biodiversity and making sure that we actually look after the health of those, either bring them back or look at opportunities to extend them. What you might be thinking of is in previous years we had and are currently re-looking at the enablement grant. The enablement grant was extremely focused on a range of mitigations, including constructed wetlands as opposed to naturally occurring existing wetlands. And certainly we can point to a number of sites where we funded or co-funded, and they were sediment traps and wetlands and areas of biodiversity rather than those other things that we spoke of a moment ago. And we've got good examples across the region of MAPT where we've worked particularly closely with Fish and Game in the past to create those areas. Just one last comment on that, councillors, I know that's just to form part of your conversation. I think Councillor Morrison talked about the wide range of mitigations that will be needed, and that is very much the case. And what the Regional Forum report said, the work that we have looking at currently around sediment loss is really important as well. So it's partly about capturing it, of course, goes into a waterway sediment, but it's also about holding it on the land as well. So it's that whole holistic approach to how we manage the and a lot of the data that like the Driving Southland have been working with farmers on becomes really important in that discussion. And LIDAR, which we have really available.
Thanks, Fiona. We wanted to make a comment.
No, I've just got another 2 reports.
Okay, right.
Is it, if anyone else is on the wetlands, we'll do that before I can.
You can go.
On the 26th of March, Tuesday, we had a meeting with the Adlussa Community Group, and I was the only one who turned up from the Regional Council until Jeremy arrived about halfway through. I don't know what happened, but the 3 of us, there was 3 invited. With Rob Scott, we visited the Tommy Gullock Bridge, which is fairly well chopped up with gravel. We visited the Adlussa Bridge, where they had worked on that using the consent that the Southern District Council has for 10 metres either side of the bridge to clean the gravel up, and also Chris Dillon's consent to make a beautiful run round of the water and going through and not actually going into any chewing into any banks and things, and then went up to the Dome Bird. Funnily enough, South Roads were there, nobody knew about it, and they were cleaning out under the bridge and taking gravel away. So that was what happened. What became of that, the Adlussa Community Group are quite unhappy that they've never had any response to what they've been doing, and they've been going for about 2 years. So Rob Scott and I undertook to make sure this would happen. I've met with Paul and Randall, and then there's Rob Scott has met with his people, and Bruce Halligan is working away there to try and get a consent to get this thing going. Now, I've upset Peter McDonald because I've gone ahead and done it, but the thing is that these people, our constituents, are ending up with nothing happening, and it just carries on and on. So that's where we're at the moment. The intention is to get a consent that will give them 150 to 200 metres either side of the bridge to clean it out, have our river people involved, And that's open to each bridge in Southland, so that's the plan there. Any questions?
Well, just on that, Alistair, we looked over the bridge yesterday on Chris Dillon's consent.
Yeah.
The, South Roads, we're just moving in there to use that consent. So the conversations, and it's the conversations I've had with them is where there's a need to take out gravel, could you use that as a preference? That message is obviously getting through.
Yeah.
So it's good that rather than digging out of a paddock, South Roads has been encouraged to make use of gravel in an area where it does need to be removed for the safety of the above bridge. So things are happening, which is good.
I guess the other thing that we put up initially, that the Tommy Gullick one was a trial to get it going, but I'm not sure how that's going to go through. And speaking with our staff, that it was better to go and get a new consent and make it work for them. The other one,
question on that.
Oh, it's just a question about extraction of gravel underneath bridges. I assume that our staff will be involved to ensure that not too much gravel is taken out, because if that happens, you undermine the bridge piles and you undermine the banks nearby. Has happened on the Reti Bridge at Wallacestown and the railway bridge just above it on the Reti River there. So it's really important to make sure that this is done in a sustainable way, and I'm sure that our staff will ensure that that happens. I just hope that is the case.
In that case, our staff were obviously been involved and didn't look to do much digging under the bridge, but it's more the bit above it that was going to take out willows and other things.
and I think that was one of the things we discussed at keeping in the consent, if it was granted, that our river management team would people would have to be involved to keep things right. Yeah, the other thing I've got this Rob Dexter that I've had to put him off. He's with this real-time monitoring of water quality. He's worked with the Waikato Council and found they were lacking in the regulations that they had. Now he's happy to come and talk to us at some stage about real-time monitoring. Is anyone interested in looking at that? Because I am. And I think that's where we're sort of got a little lacking in information at the moment.
I think most of us would be interested in hearing from anybody who can come up with a reasonably economical continuous flow. Morris.
Well, I don't know. I have faith in our staff. They know what needs to be monitored. There's a lot of information on the Environment Southland website about water quality in our rivers and how it's changing over time. You know, they're scientists with expertise to know what the right thing is to do, given the amount of money that we've got to do it and the information requirements. So I don't want to turn people away, but it seems to me that would be totally unnecessary in my view.
Is there an opportunity? I understand both sides of what's been discussed, but is there an opportunity here to help, I guess, try and show the raw data to the community on a timescale that they can see and help them understand, you know, where things are at? Is there any value in that?
Well, through you, Mr. Chairman, that's already available. I mean, Karen can probably help me.
Come forward, Karen.
It's been requested and not supplied.
Mr. Chair, so it's not a straightforward process to make that data available. That type of information is not currently available on the website. But staff are working through how to make that happen. So we are certainly trying to prepare a plan to do that in a way that is, I guess, not just providing data, but providing value over and above what people already get through LAWA, where that information is also currently available. Also, that information is available. So we are all working on it, and hopefully we'll have a plan for you soon.
Is it out of order to ask to liaise with you as you do that? Because right at the moment, we've got a position that things are changing out there and we haven't got a base water line. Maybe you have, but we haven't seen it as far as quality goes.
Yeah, I mean, I think what would be helpful is to understand what people want to access the data for. And I think that some clarity on that would help us package the data in
We
a way
want
that,
to access that data for our own use to say that things are getting worse or better. Now, you say we can go onto the LARA website, but to me, that LARA website is a bit up and down and all over the place. Well, some are improving, some are not. We want to see what nutrients are improving and probably look at it on a daily basis at times. That you shook your head the wrong way.
I mean, that is the nature of data, unfortunately, and trends don't work on a daily time step. 5 years is the sort of shortest time period is recommended for looking at trends. But I guess going back to my point, like understanding what it is people want to access the data for will help us figure out how to fill a need that LAWA is clearly not filling with the community.
Can we liaise closer with you? Is that all right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you came and asked me this question, councillor, and we had the conversation about data for you. So it wasn't that it wasn't supplied, but I think that Karen's point is the right point, which is what is it that's missing from a community need perspective? And some of that sounds to me like also the community needs some analysis of that data as well. So I think that is a perfectly legitimate question for you to be asking, and absolutely for us to be providing you with that and the council with that information. So very happy to do that.
Thank you.
We're talking about two different things. We've got our science data, which is fairly precise, but it is over a long period of time. I think what you're talking about, Alistair, is the ability for community groups or sub-catchments to have something that's actually, it's about behaviour change, and they're saying, oh, we've got flush of E. coli, well, right, where's it coming from? I think there's a value in that, but we should, and the science may not be as accurate as what our guys do, but if people take that up and they look for a problem and solve it, then I'm all for it. But it's not a competition, and that we probably don't have enough of those little indicators right through a catchment. We've got a number of sites and they're giving us good information on what's happening over a catchment, but not perhaps on a smaller catchment.
I think in my simple mind, and farmers are a wee bit like this too, if they see what's happening, they'll make a change to make it right or get it better. If they can't see and understand exactly what's happening, they are a little less enthusiastic.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm looking for.
I think we got what was your after. Thank you.
You were indicating?
Yes, that's just a couple of things that I attended, Chairman. I had the privilege of opening the National Leisure Marching it's not a tournament, field days, I think they call them, which was 72 teams of, a minimum of kind of 6 people, up to 20 something, a few weeks ago. So it was a real treat, actually. It was really cool. And a lot of people in town for the event. I also attended the Balance Farm Awards along with Councillor Morrison and Councillor McPhail. And I was at the consultation at South of Lives Autumn Festival last weekend. That's what I've been doing.
Thank you. Any further reports? If not, we will move on to item 10, staff reports. First up is the Secretary's report. When would you like to comment on the report?
Sure, thank you, Mr. Chair. So since our last meeting, we have been out for consultation with the long-term plan, which is, of course, the very dominant part of the work that's in front of council at the moment, and setting its priorities with the community for the next 10 years with a focus on the first 3. And just to remind the community that the consultation closes on the 6th of May, that there are very many ways for the community to provide information through to council in the form of a submission. They can do that in writing, they can do that online, they can do that in a visual way, in an audio way, and in a written way. There are a range of public meetings underway. All of those are advertised on our website. We have a number of them running through from this week, from the 20th of April on Saturday at the Winton Library right through until the 1st of May at the Riverton Library. And so I do encourage the public to come and meet with council and staff to discuss the matters that are before them in the LTP. There are a number of matters that are there for consultation. One of those matters is a joint piece of consultation with our district council partners, looking at a high-level climate change strategy and climate resilience strategy, and that is online. And unlike our LTP, which is closing on the 6th of May, that one closes on the 8th of May to meet the other council's deadlines as well. So just if people are interested in the range of matters that we are asking specific questions about in this LTP, all of those are listed on our website, and I would encourage them to go to that. And so that's been a major part of the work. In addition to that, there are a few other matters I draw your attention to. One is that we've been asked to submit to the government's fast track bill, which there is a conversation at this council meeting following this report. There are also, there's a significant amount of work going on in the science and operational area. The one I just like to draw your attention to is the work that's going on in the Waio River. A very critical piece of work in there in relation to modelling that's going to help inform what the future for that management of the Waio will be. And in terms of the work in our operations area, there's a significant amount of work that's coming to a conclusion at the end of our summer season, and also looking at that work in our areas around pest plant management. The Mid-Dome contract is back to us for ongoing work and signing off, and there's some commentary in here on that. There's also quite a bit of commentary in here around the work of the catchment integration team in Waituna Lagoon, and we've just discussed some of that at the moment, so there'll be a further update at the Regional Services Committee on that. And to just draw your attention to some matters that are in the compliance area, in particular that the aerial monitoring of dairy discharge permits happened in March, and there has been a significant amount of interest always every year in aerial monitoring work, and so happy to answer questions on that today. Any other matters that you may want to discuss that I haven't highlighted?
Robert.
Thank you. Well, just a couple of little things with regard to pest plants. So it described the funding as having reduced, and the amount, and that we won't be able to, the group won't be able to continue at the pace that they were. Presumably that means they're now going backwards relative to where they would have been had they had the same amount of funding. How significant is that? And do you have a long-term view on potential funding coming in and the effects of not having enough from this point on?
So this is particularly in relation to wilding pines, yeah. So there was a reduction in the government contribution for wilding pines, at least it still continues, we still have funding. So the work is continuing, just not at the scale in the past. However, we've got a reasonable indication that government is looking quite favourably on this particular piece of work in an ongoing fashion. And Don has come to the table to update us, because we've just been talking about this with the trust in the last week. So.
Through you, Mr. Chair, unfortunately I don't have an update. Alan Mead was unable to make it to the meeting today, and no one from Bio has been able to pop over, but I'm happy to take the question and come back to you.
Okay, well, could I just ask a minor question then? Where has the wilding larch been found? Do you know? It mentioned larch for the first time being discovered as a wilding tree. Anyone know where?
So that I don't know, but we will come back to you.
Nothing around the Queenstown area, but there may well be some in Southland as well.
All right, thank you. Thank you.
Morris.
Thank you, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Excuse me. In relation to blue cliffs or Papatotro, where do we see that going from here? A couple of other questions as well. At the moment, it seems to be back in limbo, nothing much is happening, everything's okay now. But are we really talking to the community about how they're going to have to
move back or move away? Is there some program in place for that?
Yes, so Blue Cliffs is still being managed in the recovery mode through the Emergency Management Southland, and Rosie's come to update you on that.
Thank you, through you, Chair. So the transition period into recovery ended on Sunday morning. In terms of the Blue Cliffs matter, the local recovery manager has been appointed and is in place. He works at Southland District Council. He's going to be leading the recovery from them. I talked to him just yesterday, and they're planning for more communication with the community about next steps and roles and responsibilities, etc. So there was a desire from the Mayor to be able to talk to them more deliberately when we had a better idea of the options. So that's one of the things that the recovery manager is gripping up. So we're keeping a watching brief. The KEG is meeting on Friday, and there'll be an update to them there. Yes, so that's where Blue Cliffs is at. In terms of the broader conversation around movement and other wider longer term considerations, we had a staff session yesterday on adaptive pathways and climate change, and that'll be something else that comes back to the council for further discussion in due course, and connecting it to obviously the programme around regional spatial strategies, as well as all of those other matters that we're responsible for. So
And just on that, Lisa's absolutely correct, and I think the community have been given time to actually absorb the options. Most of them are really expensive, but there will be another meeting, obviously, with that community going forward. I was down there at the weekend, fingers crossed, but at the moment, the mouth is below the houses, and the flow at high flows we had the other day was eroding the spit, not the other side. So it may last for weeks or months. Nobody knows, but at the moment, things have settled down. The dump's been removed. It's been tidied up. There's a little bit of erosion at that particular site because it's closer to where the mouth is, but at the moment things seem to have settled down a little bit. But that community.
And Chair, can I just add on that specific point there around the erosion and last week's event. One of the things that we undertook as part of the recovery was to initiate ongoing monitoring of the erosion, and so we were down last week on Monday as part of that monitoring with the drones to take some additional footage, and then they went down again on Friday to see if the rain event had caused any other erosion. It hadn't, as you've alluded to. The mouth of the through the spit at that end by the landfill is the only movement we're seeing. There's no additional erosion at this point of the actual cliff face itself. The catchment team will continue to monitor, and we're working with SDC about what that needs to look like and how frequently. But yeah, obviously the catchment. And last week's event enabled us to test some of that response mode and what some trigger points might be for the community down there. So, Okay.
So Mr. Chairman, sorry to follow that up. I hope that we're not giving the impression that some kind of sea wall or rocks or concrete or something will be able to be put in place to protect them there. I think that would be irresponsible for us to even give an indication that that might be a feasible option. Have you got any comment on that?
So through you, Chair, what was presented at the community session a few weeks back now was the fact that any kind of seawall or any kind of infrastructure at all would be very expensive and require a huge amount of investment, and therefore was not likely to be good. But what was also discussed with them was this is the initial thinking about solutions that have been used elsewhere, and this is the quantum that we'd be talking about in terms of the recovery manager is taking the next steps on from that, which is to actually articulate with their community what that might look like for them and what they'd be up to. So we're helping with some of that in our own way, the conversation is ongoing from a staff perspective and also from an EMS perspective. So, but not overselling what's possible at all.
Thank you.
Neville.
Well, two things. Firstly, perhaps Morris's last question there, amounts such as up to $10 million have been mentioned for some of the work that the residents might desire to see happening. It seems, it's something we considered, but who's got the $10 million? Environment Southland has a role in overall river management, but in fact, management of the area where those houses are, where those residents are, is a Southland District Council matter. Southland District Council and the recovery manager will make that decision. It's not ours.
I have another question on a different topic, but let somebody else go.
Further questions on Wimwood's report? Eric?
Thank you. Yeah, no, I'm just a bit interested in some of these wild species that are being discovered. And is there a penalty applied to anybody that might be caught doing this? Like, the most likely, if there was a wallaby seen, a lot of people go up and hunt wallabies this time of year, and I think a little joey would be a nice pet or something, and then it either escapes or is released. And then also the wild gold, not sure what that is. A cyprinid is a species of carp, and well, it's also the wider carp. Some people might call koi carp a wild goldfish. I don't know, but yeah, a bit of a concern that these things are occurring. And I am aware that Lake Virginia and Wanganui is now full of red sliders, turtles. So these things happen, and I just think we need to be on top of. And whether our website, I haven't looked, has got anything that might discourage people from thinking they can take matters into their own hands.
Through you, Mr. Chair, there will be penalties inside the Biosecurity Act, and what I can do is get Ali to summarise those for you and pass them to you.
Cool.
Morris.
Thank you. About the Waiau bioenergetic work. Can you elaborate on that and give us an indication of how that information might be used in the future?
Yeah, I think I'd quite like to do that. So Karen, have you got, you'd like to come and talk about this, because I think it's a rather critical piece of work for us at the moment.
So through you, Mr. Chair, there is another item relating to a contract on this piece of work in the agenda as well. But in terms of this work, council's maybe aware, this is the last river to be done. The other three major rivers in Southland have already been analysed using this method. So this work will help inform us around what hydrological regime will support ecological outcomes. The work is, alongside this work, there is a cultural flows assessment also being done. So the work is being done jointly. So in terms of which particular species we'll look at for the ecological health that will be worked through with relevant whenua. Yeah, in terms of how it will get used, it was originally intended to be feeding into the Plan Change Tuatahi work. So it will depend on where, I guess, the freshwater policy space goes, but certainly it'll be, best science available information for any future regulatory.
So, Mr. Chair, it will be very, it'll be an essential piece of information too, in terms of how we're looking at catchment context, how we're looking at managing each of the EPUs, what any of our regulatory and non-regulatory interventions might look like on the river systems. This is a really critical part of that work program. And also, of course, there is in 2031 the Meridian Consent coming up for renewal. So, this is essential information that will go into the thought about that also.
Phil and Lyndall.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess my question is relating to the proposed Southland Water and Land Plan and the implementation process. And I was just wondering if you could perhaps just give us a short overview of how complex that is, because I suspect some of us, probably myself guilty, is probably underestimates just what's involved in that. I'm just wondering, is that a big task to make it the implementation process or the implementation planning?
On the upside of that, Councillor, if I understand your question correctly, because this is a notified plan, we're actually, actually implementing parts of it as we speak. So the council is already, utilising the matters that are in that plan. But in terms of the actual adoption process, because you're actually in a statutory process at the moment,
Very short, trying to keep a short answer. It's fairly perfunctory at this point. The extraordinary council meeting that we've scheduled for the 8th of May, this will be the only item on it, and beyond it's an admin type situation. So in terms of broader implementation, as the CE's alluded to, it's been underway for some time. There are a couple of other assessments that we have to undertake, which will be presented to you during that extraordinary meeting. And aside from that, it is a consideration from the council to make the plan fully operative. The vast majority of the plan is already being treated as operative. It is beyond challenge, and therefore the key part that the operative date part, which will be tabled as part of that extraordinary meeting, is important and will need to be set by the council, and that will then start the 6-month existing use rights clock, after which point everybody who is captured by the new rules. That's the main difference between where we're at right now compared to where we're
Thanks, Chairman. 2 quick things, I think. Firstly, if CE could remind us all of the options for the not online options for submissions, people pick up that information. Places like libraries, I'm assuming.
Oh, the not online ones. Yes, libraries are a very good place to go. And I'm just going to refer to, while you asked your second question, to the website to remind people exactly where else they might go and get that information. So.
My second question is to you also, so you need to do 2 things at once. The policy and reform stuff coming out of the government and the extension to the duration of marine farm consents. I know we worked together a very, very good and very speedy response to that, but I'm wondering what the sector generally has been saying in that space. Our regional sector.
Sorry, but Lucy might be aware, because I think everybody wants to win it, including probably an RSD one.
Yeah.
Lucy.
So thank you, Chair. Just so I make sure I hear you were specifically asking about the aquaculture.
Yeah, the marine farm consents.
Yeah. So we submitted, and Te Ora Kahika has also submitted on behalf of the sector. I understand there's been a number of other submissions from those who would be impacted by it. Marlborough and Nelson were also looking broadly and similar things to ours in terms of some concerns. There's been some follow-up from MPI senior staff to us to say, we've got your reply and we're keen to delve in a little deeper. And Bruce met with one of those representatives yesterday to talk through some of that. So there was obviously some follow-up around consent conditions as well. So moving, still live. There's Bruce.
Just to add a little bit, Lucy summarised it really well. Not just from the regional sector, but from some other entities. There's been some feedback around what they see as maybe an inconsistency or inequity about extending for a very long period of time one suite of consents for one sector relative to other parts of the economy, like the farming sector, who generally their consents are being compressed rather than expanded. As Lucy mentioned, we had some further targeted dialogue with MPI yesterday around they're looking at, they're quite constructive and creative. They're looking at feedback that they've received and looking at whether there's opportunities to modify what's currently proposed by government to provide a little bit more opportunity for regular revisiting of consents. If you're going to run with a long-term duration, are there opportunities to massage that somewhat to have some regular opportunities to review things? So that seemed quite positive. They've certainly taken on board this our submission and similar submissions from the sector.
Can I just do a supplementary, and it might be inappropriate. We were also concerned about the fact that there was to be no reference really to the existing conditions. Is there some appetite to revisit that element?
There seemed to be, through Mr Chairman, that the staff that I spoke to, obviously they're working through and talking to a number of other councils, and as Lucy mentioned, certainly suggested to them that Marlborough is a key entity to talk to as well. They've got a lot of experience in the agriculture space. But those staff that we spoke to, obviously they have to report back to the Minister, etc. They seem to be quite open to revisiting a range of things and picking up those points. So they're quite receptive to the feedback that they've received.
Thanks.
Well, there might be a desire to give some comfort to an industry that would set a precedent. You could have the dairy industry, for instance, will say we want the same and anybody else. So the flow-on effects could be quite dramatic. So I'm hopeful that we will see the ability to at least be able to review it. Because the consent's been there for 25 years. The rules moved on. The industry involved know that the rules moved on. So hopefully that will be looked at when they look at this.
Thank you, Bruce. Mr Chairman, just one other thing. About on page 140 about the inspection in Fiordland about Underia, and found no Underia at Chalky Inlet site, which is really good now. It seems like it's gone from there, but it was disappointing to read that there was a low level of compliance with fishing and recreational vessels, especially those in Milford Sound. And you say that you're working with the industry to try and address this, but I wonder whether we have enough resources or whether we should put more resources into this area, so because it's such a difficult place to control any invasive species once it gets there, and it's much better to put our resources into making sure they don't get there in the first place. So my question is, are we doing enough in this area? Is there more that you think we should be doing, and how should that be funded, and how should that occur?
Through you, Mr Chair. Limited for responses on this with Ellie's absence, but what I can say is she's put a lot of work into strategic thinking and how to manage this very remote but very special area. So that is a current piece of work that's been worked through. There's also a small group of us trying to align our resources to be able to be in Fiordland more often, and what that would look like. So that piece of work is also
We did have a discussion the other day on recreational boats tend to be trailers, so there's probably a bit less risk. But the conversation John raised about possibly having a camera at the jetty, at least there would be a record about who had been there, and there's also some concerns about people perhaps not following the number of fish. But so that's quite.
We're discussing about cruise ships and how little individual people pay to visit this really special area. I calculated it to be for a big ship around about $14 per person. And, it seems to me that there's a great opportunity there to increase that a bit so that we could get more resources to dedicate to this kind of work. I know that the cost of the fee for marine ships visits is reviewed periodically, so maybe there's an opportunity there to do something about that in this space.
Yes, when it comes up for review, that obviously will be a possibility. Neville.
It's just Fiordland is an absolutely huge area, and it's physically very difficult. I'm not saying possible, but it's very difficult to do the work that needs to be done over there. I have suggested that we get a larger vessel for Environment South and have a permanent crew over there, but I think he supports that. But that's sort of the kind of response that we would have to have if we're going to have a meaningful input to the recreational boats, particularly because there are dozens of, if not hundreds of them, constantly going in and out of Fiordland. So we can control the extent of commercial operators who will report on what they see as breaches of the rules which they are obeying. But we're still really touching the edges. So that's right that you've got a concern, but it's a very difficult, expensive concern to deal with.
What if we charge those cruise ship passengers a bit more?
It costs a lot more money than the few more dollars on the cruise ship passengers.
I don't know. If you work it out, the number of visitors, Mr. Chairman, through.
I'm all in favour of us getting a bigger vessel and being permanently over there.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any further questions on Laura's report? Robert.
Just very quickly, I want to congratulate Lucy on her use of the word perfunctory. I thought that was really elegant. I love it. Secondly, just in response to Councillor Roy's comments about incoming pest animals. I was driving over the Blackmount Hill a few days ago, and as I came down onto the flats, there were 2 wild pigs trotting along the side of the road. It's the first time I've seen that, and I lived there for a number of years. So I guess that's part of the problem. Is that those animals
They're already endemic.
Yeah, well,
Captain Cook, you'd have to
there's a
go
lot.
back and change what he did.
Yeah.
I think there's quite a lot of evidence of pigs being seen in Western Southland and farming areas and in townships in a way that people are reporting to us they haven't seen them in the past.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
I think we're within 150 metres of their house. Yeah.
that doesn't sound, that
They
doesn't
stand
surprise
delicious
me.
though.
Yeah. We had a nightcaps in Ototo as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
This issue did come up at the regional sector and South Wellington down to far larger habitat with the exotic forests, and we are seeing, we've seen in the Hokanui what they picked up 3,400 deer, pigs, possums, mustelids, and I raised the issue that this could be a threat to the current TV-free status in Southland. But we are seeing the numbers, and there's far more habitat for them to hide in, and that is a concern. Peter.
Yes, just to comment on that, there is individuals in our communities that will release pigs for sport closer to where they live. That's a known fact. We don't want that to happen with the wallabies. So I think people are going to be very vigilant around that. If there is individuals talking about doing that, we need to be on that case.
It's lucky that snakes aren't a trophy animal.
Can I move the recommendation?
Yes,
Recommendation moved by Neville, seconded by Lyndall. All in favour will say aye. Aye. Right, we'll move to item 10.2, which is draft fast tracks approved bill submission.
Chair, Lucy will take us through the submission.
Kia ora, thank you. So I'll take the paper as read, obviously, but I just wanted to highlight a couple of things we've touched on a little already this morning. This is the fast track approvals bill that has been tabled at Parliament, and they're seeking submissions on. The submission to the bill closes on the 19th, which is Friday. And it's quite it's an omnibus bill, that's first thing to note, and it provides pretty broad powers to the ministers in terms of a number of different acts. We have been involved through our work with the Kahika on the sector-wide submission, but this one is specifically focused on consideration of Environment Southland's views and what some of our concerns would be. It's worth noting that from a process perspective, this is likely to streamline a fair amount of consent for these larger projects that have either regional or national significance, and is similar to the COVID-19 approach. The submission itself that's draft, we're really keen on your thoughts on, as a lot of the work that is happening at the moment is coming at us kind of thick and fast. So this was a well-timed council meeting for us to be able to put it in front of you and give you some time to consider and provide us with some feedback. Shana from the team is in the wings, ready to take your notes so that we can get those all pulled together and meet the submission time frames. So in the submission, you'll see we've kind of highlighted five main points. I think the one I would really, a couple that I'd draw your attention to from my perspective are the most significant concerns as a lack of opportunity to refer to existing planning documents at a regional and district level. Those processes, as we are well aware, take an awful amount of time, a long time, a lot of investment at a community level, and I think it's really important that those are able to be considered as part of the panel and ministers' consideration of these sorts of projects. The two other points I'll just make, the breadth of acts that the panels would have powers to make decisions over is also significant and wide-ranging. Not entirely sure how that will work in practice, and the purposes of the acts don't neatly align, which has been our ongoing conversation with the ministry about suggested changes to various pieces of the regulatory framework. And the third thing I'd just mention is we've talked previously around the freshwater panel process at the council with regard to what we were anticipating to have to do for our legislative approach. What they are outlining in the bill in terms of the use of expert panels is quite similar to that process, and therefore will have some challenges. There isn't a huge amount of these sorts of folk who'd be able to be pulled together for an expert panel. And at this point, we haven't got good visibility over what the government's intention is there. If they're intending to do something similar to the Freshwater Commission, they haven't said that yet, but there is a concern there. There need to be multiple expert panels, and who and how they're going to bring those groups together will be kind of make or break for some of these decisions. So those are the three kind of headlines I wanted to draw your attention to, but really keen, Chair, to have comments and thoughts and feedback on the actual draft submission, or just questions about the process in general.
I think the panel, NITL panel has been announced, but one of the things I looked at is the fast track. We've got no control over the consent conditions, but I'm assuming we would have to do the compliance and enforcement. Is that correct? And is there any redress for that?
Yes, so that's my understanding too, Chair. And the point at point 5 there about the cost recovery, both the process and the implementation of these consents would have costs associated with them, and it's not currently clear how those costs would be recovered.
Whether we can have any say, because it's our story if conditions are imposed and they're impractical to actually comply, that would be a concern for us too, I guess. But I've got Robert, Eric, then Peter.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Lucy, you're calling for responses from council laws. The Environmental Defence Society has put in a submission on this. And if it's okay with you, Mr. Chairman, could I read a paragraph which expresses my view exactly that they've written? It says, what is clear from the bill is that it's a fake premise purporting to speed up decision making when its real purpose is to enable environmental harm with impunity. Ministers will have unprecedented powers to approve pet projects. The public will be precluded from having any say. Development is given absolute priority in an astonishingly unbalanced set of decision-making criteria. It's not an exaggeration to say that the legislation lacks legitimacy and is truly an exercise in unbridled power by ministers. That's what I think.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think this is a very good submission, and I'll support the premises that you've put forward, Lucy. I just would make a practical comment as a person who has read several thousand submissions in my life, in a different life. And I would expect, because this is quite controversial, that there could be as many as 10,000 submissions hit the process. So you need to be able to make sure that what we're doing is seen and considered. So the first thing about that is an executive summary right at the start, because people get a bit selective after 5 or 6 hours of reading these. That's the first thing. The second thing I would suggest is that you, and I don't know whether this was in the notice given, but an intent to appear in person. And that also brings a bit of focus to what you're going to have to say. And with Zoom and Teams now, there is more of that happening than has happened in the past. So those are the two things I would add in there: an executive summary and a desire to be heard.
Thanks, Eric. Peter.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chairman. Just got a question. Is there a ability within this process of people to bring forward their consent renewals and put them into this window for the fast tracking?
Through you, Chair, yes, that's my understanding, but there is also a capacity for people who've been previously turned down to have their consent reconsidered.
Okay, so this could be And then you, Mr. Chair, you talked about their responsibilities of cost around compliance. There could be a lot of work for us because potentially there could be a really clogged window here, couldn't there?
But Morris, then Neville, there's Neville.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Lucy, there was a news item in a inside government publication just the other day, which named the Fast Track Expert Advisory Group. So none of these people appear to have resource management experience. So what is their function?
So through you, Chair, still to be confirmed to a degree, and that's one of the grey areas in terms of what the expert panels are that will actually hear the consent applications versus who are the experts that the government have announced. So yes, I'm not being cagey, we don't actually have a definitive answer about what that function of that group is going to be, and whether or not it will provide similar to the Water Commission process, which was obviously, we had a chief set up whose role it was to commission panels. That's likely to be similar, but I'm not at this point entirely.
Right, thank you. Well, I think it would be good to have that clarified, and also maybe to say that the people who consider these applications have experience in resource management and science and all the relevant technical areas to ensure that they are, considered appropriately, not just from a business case point of view, which seems to be the situation here.
Through you, Chair, if there's another question from other councils, we can certainly bolster that part of the submission in terms of the capacity and the capability to achieve outcomes. So we mentioned it before around who the expert panels might be, but we can certainly ask for some more clarity about the members of it and what their function is. Yeah, and local, definitely. That was one of my thoughts too.
Right, thank you.
Yeah, and I think, as the Chair, just also that the regional sector will be doing a submission, a combined submission in as well, and that matter around decision-making and process transparency is a key part of that. So I think that is worth emphasising in ours also.
Yeah, and I'd just add as well, on Friday, the local government steering group is coming together to discuss a myriad of things as part of their standard meeting schedule, but this is on the agenda as well. So there'll be feedback being sought from the conversations last week that Nicole and Wilma have already talked to, and then what an actual draft submission would look like for that group to consider.
Right, thanks.
Yeah, I've got a lot of concerns about the process of this proposed change in legislation, Chairman. It seems I didn't see any environment experienced commissioners sitting on the expert panel. I get an impression that the government are doing away with the last vestiges of anything under the Resource Management Act, because it doesn't suit them. Omnibus legislation can cover a lot of sins. I just think that the proposal is far too wide-ranging. And I think that the submission that's been from this council is very well done. It hasn't gone over the top, which we might have desired given more time. But I just wonder, what's the trigger point for an application to be considered under fast track?
Regional or national importance.
Okay, all right. Well, the other thing is there is a presumption that I see that all these approved things will be approved. It's just a matter of how they're going to be approved. So whatever application comes under that, it will be approved, but we'll worry about the conditions and consequences later on. I don't think I'm being cynical here. I'm just seeing a process I don't like.
Lyndall, then me.
Thanks, Chairman. Yeah, I'd agree, Councillor Cook. I'm really uncomfortable with this bill, really uncomfortable. It almost makes me feel sick, actually. There's very little reference to environmental impact and consequences. So thank you for the work that you've put in to make it the submission make sense. I am a little bit concerned though about our first sentence and the key themes. Environment Southland considers that there is a need for fast track consenting to facilitate matters of regional and national importance. On the back of your comment earlier, Lucy, about yes, we do need to refine some of the systems and make stuff easier. I get that now, but my hackles went up immediately when I read that sentence the first time. So I wonder if I'm the only one that feels that way. If not, could we maybe reword that so that it actually explained that yes, there are some things that are.
Quoted media that picked that sentence wouldn't be.
Yeah, but you know, there are some clunky things that do need refining, but as I certainly personally am not comfortable with the fast track consenting process at all.
I'm reasonably comfortable with that wording, and I think the one thing is missing is a sunset clause. Now, it's an assumption that this is a stopgap measure until the RM is reformed, but that is not specifically mentioned, and I think that would be a good thing to have there, that there will be a sunset clause when the RM reform comes through with this fast track discipline.
The other thing I was going to say, Lucy, is that the more firm your language, the better, in my opinion. Using words like must, I'm right behind. Thank you.
Demand.
I'm not sure we can go that far, but we still have to play nicely in the sandpit, but we need to be as firm as we possibly can.
Yeah, I just want to make it obvious that it may not be obvious, but in the community view around austerity at the moment, it's wide ranging, isn't it? But this bill has the potential to impact significant cost onto this council and therefore the ratepayer. So I just thought I would say that.
Because we went through the COVID, we had a similar situation, probably not quite as in where we found a few flaws in that too, where the local, we lost local decision making there, and we consent would be one point. And anything further?
So councillors, because this is a matter, we're in a time frame that is quite tight. Before we take direction on altering things in this, I just want to be very clear about some matters. So the matter that Councillor Ludlow just raised, can I say from a Chief Executive's perspective, our joint view as Chief Executives from the regional sector is that we do actually see a place for fast track consenting. The issue is not whether there's a place for some fast track consenting, we believe, but actually how it's implemented. And so I think the intent of the position here is that it is that we think that sector-wide, the intent of having a fast track approval process is not something that the council has objected to in the past, and that we see a place for it in dealing with some complex matters that the RMA is not actually useful for advancing. However, it's how that's done. So I think the matters that the chairman has raised, we might be able to be more specific about. So the first one is, I'm just wondering if we could just get a little bit more specific about the matter relating to decision making and process transparency, Lucy. I think that one, and I wonder whether, I could just get your clarity around that, because certainly from the Chief Executive's position, our joint view is that actually the expert panel process is a better process than what's being proposed currently for the reasons that you've just said. So I would support your conversation on that matter, and I think if council was of a mind to be more specific on that matter, I could certainly say that would be an officer support at this council for that. Are we specific enough, Lucy, about the sunset clause matter? Because I think that the matter that the chairman raises is actually quite important, and it's one that I believe the chief executives will be raising collectively to government. So I think that is possibly also a matter. I mean, both of those issues we can raise, saying that we would like to recommend applying a sunset clause to the fast track approvals legislation, and perhaps just to see. And for the other matter that we raised in relation to decision making, what are your views about perhaps being stronger on the matter of an expert panel rather than an advisory group?
I think on both of those things and from the council perspective, this continuing the conversation relates to that, so we can make those more direct.
So there were three matters there. The first one was, are you comfortable with the fact that we are proposing to say that there is a place for fast track legislation? And that's with the caveats of the submission.
With that,
I realise there are some councils that don't agree, so I'm looking for a, the majority consensus on that.
Can I just ask whether there is a need for fast track processes? To me, it seems that it's really important that there is a great deal of transparency.
Yes, we agree. That's right.
And as the point was made, because we could potentially end up carrying the costs, and given that things are occurring at speed, that could surpass our normal planning cycle for annual plans and long-term plans potentially.
That I agree, councillor. That would be, the approvals make the decision making. Our view is you've really got to have decision making transparency.
Yeah.
And we think expert panels.
Yeah, and I guess that would extend to early warning that we are going to be potentially the recipients of decisions. That
I mean, one of the drivers for this is the fact that you've got an RMA that's reasonably broken. You've got highly litigious, highly expensive and time frames. So I think the motivation behind this is to have a stopgap measure that actually things can go through a process before that reform takes place. And that was why I mentioned the sunset clause, because we had some of the groups saying, oh no, this is going to be here forever. Well, I don't think that would be the wish of most people.
So, Mr. Chair, would council be happy that we use the language of decision-making transparency and also a shift to expert panels? That will be the language that I'm proposing.
We have agreement there, I think. Yep.
Okay, and then the last one is the reference to a sunset clause in the legislation. Lucy, is there anything else that we haven't covered that we think might reflect the joint conversations across the regional council sector?
I think the point around that local flavour we have covered, and I'm comfortable with how we drafted the submission, but if there was a desire to be more thinking about the need for local regional as part of that expert panel, we could do that there. Yeah, that was.
Right, we're in a position where somebody would like to move the recommendation, which is to note the report, and we actually have considered this too. So,
do we need to reflect the fact that you've instructed us on those three matters? So how might we?
Submission as
discussed. Thank you.
Moved by Eric, seconded by Morris. Any further discussion? I will put the recommendation. All in favour will say aye. No, carried.
Thank you, councillors.
Right, the next item is financial services director nomination. Page 152. Don, would you like to speak to the item?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'll take the report as read, and just before we move to any questions and or the recommendation, just a couple of further points I'd just like to add. We received this letter because we are a shareholder in Civic Financial Services, albeit a very small one at 0.09%. Second point is council has not had any representation on the Civic Financial Services Board in the past. And finally, just for your wider information, the current non-independent directors on the board come from Auckland, Tauranga City and Waipara District Council.
Eric.
Well, do we have a candidate we're wanting to promote? And secondly, are there some issues that need to be addressed? That would be my question to
So short answer is no, we don't have a candidate at this point. It's an independent director that's not standing for re-election, and then it's the non-independent that's retired by rotation, but has offered herself back up. So if we were going to put somebody from council, they'll be standing up again.
So do we exactly do anything? I guess that's my question.
I'll move we note the report.
Seconded by Lyndall.
Wish them luck.
In favour? Aye. Right, we move to item 10.4, contract for net water energy intake study in Wales. A little bit about that in this report. This is different.
Recommendation, Chairman, note with that contract.
This is just a pro forma matter in relation to that it is about our delegations that needs to come to you. But we have to answer more questions should you want us to.
Any questions?
Do we know the actual cost, or is that a public excluded matter? Would that be some-
We're talking 300,000, but it's like a page.
No, that's the delegations, the cost of the
Delegation. So it's excess of 300,000.
It is, no, not by much. In fact, it just nudges its way over the top of it. So.
Yeah, sorry, through you, councillor. Yeah, it is slightly north of 300,000 for this.
Only just over.
Yes, by a few.
350 or something like that.
Yeah,
it's less than 350.
it was 330 odd. Don't have the number off the top of my head.
So, Mr. Chairman, is that for both the NIWA component and the Cawthron component, or are they?
For you, Mr. Chair, that's just the core component, the NEVA component.
Right. So is that the same sort of amount?
No, unfortunately, the NEVA component is much smaller,
Much.
about half the cost.
So what will the total cost for that be?
So I'm looking at, so can I just be clear, these are contracts we have entered into. They're not before you for discussion because of the costs being in excess. They're here because they've been budgeted for, they've been in our program of work and agreed over a period of time. And we have a requirement for council to endorse expenditure that's been agreed. And these are part of our program of work. But just for your information, when they exceed, and this is over multiple years, they exceed $300,000, then we do need to actually have your approval for that. But the approvals of expenditure in relation to this are on an annual basis operational in our program of work. So I'm just looking at to the extent to which the nature of the actual detail of the individual contracts is commercially sensitive, I think should not be discussed in anywhere other than public excluded.
Okay, maybe that we accept.
So it's within budget. And,
yes, it is, and it's here. It's here not for discussion about whether we should be doing this at this point. This is here because we're finishing our program of work. Yeah.
Members move that we note the report. Seconded. Any further discussion? I will move the recommendation. All in favour will say aye. Right, we'll move to 10.5, which is the councillors' meeting schedule. Any changes or?
The changes to be included are the invitations that have gone out for the LTP discussions that have occurred. They'll all be incorporated into this. I'm going to go through them individually, but if there's any others.
I just want to leave their absence. June 24th to 28th, May 15th, 16th, and October 14th to 30th, please.
October 4th.
15th to 30th, please.
I know you've got it noted, Jan, but it's not showing out on the 26th of September to.
No, because it doesn't cover these periods.
Yeah. That's fine. I've got Alistair.
No apply for me for the 2nd of July through to the 23rd of July.
Yep. Lyndall?
Yes, please leave next Tuesday and Wednesday, next 23rd and 24th.
I'm just wondering if the South Island Regional Transport Chairs meeting in Christchurch, 2 days ago, needs to be on here.
2 days ago, no, it will have been approved in the last month's one, because I've known about that one for some time, so. So the ones that are listed here, the ones that don't have approvals.
And I've been invited to take part in a panel in Wellington conference, the 1st and 2nd of July. What is it called now? The Thumbs of this primary industry, something or other. So it's interesting, we've got a panel and we've invited Doug Lead and myself and talking about probably agricultural interaction with local government, so that'll be a good conversation. Any additions or omissions from the schedule?
If you put a claim in against it.
Heritage Building Trust, June.
Friday.
No further considerations or additions. Would somebody like to move the resolution on page 68? It's Eric and Linda, was it? All in favour, say aye. Aye. Right, item 10.6, road and seal, moved by Eric. Seconded by John. All in favour, say aye. Aye. 10.7, ongoing matters.
Just a matter of noting it. It's a measure, so it doesn't get lost. Yeah.
Moved by Lyndall. Seconded by Phil, all in favour, say aye. Aye. Right, that will conclude the open business for the meeting today. We have some public excluded business. So, with reasons, and then
You're going to move into public excluded to confirm the minutes of the ordinary meeting of council of the 6th of March, the extraordinary meeting of council of the 13th of March, and to adopt the public excluded committee resolutions from the Southport subcommittee meeting of the 11th of March, Risk and Assurance Committee on the 20th of March, the emergency meeting of the Southland Civil Defence Emergency Management Group, the 13th of March, and the extraordinary meeting of the Southland Civil Defence Emergency Management Group on the 25th of March. And the grounds to go into public exclusion is set out in each of those minutes, section 72H, section 72J, and section 72A. Information.
having heard the reasons, Eric has moved, seconder for that, Alistair. All in favour will say aye. We offline.